Hello everyone, what's up and welcome back to another, not a reading vlog, welcome back to another sit down video. So for this video I'm going to be discussing some of my favorites for the first half of 2023. I can't believe it's almost December, so yeah, that's something to go over in your mind for now. I will be having the last half of my favorite reads for 2023 up at the end of December. But for now, let's just look at some of my favorites for the first half. Now, if it is your first time here, what I tend to do is I tend to pick two books that were my favorite for the months and I discuss them and I tell why I love these books so much. Some of them I realized weren't 5 stars. Don't question it. Just go with it. If you're on my Goodreads and you see, say for example, the first book I mentioned has like 3.5 stars, don't ask. I had a bad month in January. The fact that I got married was like the upside, but the rest of the reading experience was not. Anyway, with that said, let's just discuss. So the first favorite was River of Shadows by Karina Hall, and if you have been subscribed to my channel for quite some time, you would know that Karina Hall is like one of my favorite authors. She writes these easy reading books that just continues to flow. They are gripping, they are page turning, and they just grab your attention from the start. So what the River of Shadows is, it's a dark fantasy romance based on Finnish mythology. We get 24-year-old Hannah, whose life has been knocked upside down by the news that her estranged father has passed away. Determined to go to his funeral because she loved him despite not seeing him for months on end or years on end, she goes to northern Finland to partake in his funeral. A day before his funeral, she discovers that his body is missing, and this weird, strange dude called Rasmus approaches her and he's like, listen, your dad is actually a powerful shaman and he has gone to the world of the dead to get a better life. But the problem is the god of death has captured him and we don't know what the progress is so far. So Hannah, being the determined girl that she is, decides that she and Rasmus are going to go to the world of the dead to try and save her dad. Upon this small adventure that she partakes in with Rasmus, she comes across the god of death. She decides to trade her life for that of her father so that her father can live a happy life. And the god of death is like, I'm intrigued by you, so yes, if you marry me, I'll set your dad free and he can go on his merry way. It's kind of like a Beauty and the Beast meets Hayley and Persephone retelling. I really enjoyed that each character had their own set of personalities and they just grabbed your attention no matter what. There's like a dead flying Pegasus that is weirdly funny and I really enjoyed that. The god of the dead, of whose name I forgot. I'll remember it when I see it. But anyway, he's also very charming in his broody, morally grey self. So that was just an exciting read and it's really a good palate cleanser if you really are in the mood for something fantasy but not heavy fantasy and you enjoy dark fantasies. Yeah, that makes sense. The second book I enjoyed immensely was A World Without Princes by Saman Chainani. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. And he is the author of the most popular A School for Good and Evil. It's also been turned into a Netflix movie, so if you really want to go have a look at that. Because it is the second book, I will be discussing the premise of the first book and a little bit of the second book just so that you can have the premise. So the first book follows Agatha and Sophie, and they are best friends. And they live in this village surrounded by woods, and every 4 years, I believe, 2 children go missing. And there's always a theme with the children that go missing. One is always good and beautiful and comes from a happy family, and the other one is usually odd and comes from an unhappy family. You know, you get the drill. And in saying it in a nice way, the other one is always ugly. So Sophie is determined that she is going to be the one kidnapped this year, but she wants to go to the school for good because obviously she's good. She does things in town obviously for the purpose of trying to look good so that she can land in good, and that's just a whole discussion on its own for another day. But anyway, so on the night of the kidnapping, Agatha and Sophie are kidnapped, and Agatha is dropped in good, much to Sophie's surprise, and Sophie is dropped in bad. And throughout this whole story, they try and prove that their placings have been a mistake and they want to go to the opposing sides. And that is basically the premise of the first book. Now, the second book follows, again, Agatha and Sophie, and they are back home after their whole scourge at the School for Good and Evil. But Agatha is unhappy with the decision she made in the first book, and so she wants a different kind of happily ever after. With this small wish she makes, they are thrust back into this fairy tale world, but this time it's not good versus evil, it's prince versus princesses, and somewhere along the line, sacrifices have to be made in order for things to go back to normal. I really enjoyed this book, even though I felt it was a bit long in the beginning. I really enjoyed the storytelling, the magical essence around it. It was a great middle grade fantasy that I devoured. The only downside I had with this book was some of the things were very similar to the first book, and I was scared that that was going to be the running theme for the next 7 books, is that every book is going to have like a similar trend how it follows. That I think knocked it down to about a 4-star, but other than that, I really enjoyed the characters, the way they are trying to save their world once again, and just the adventure they go on and the creatures they meet, the characters they meet. It was all just super fun to read, and I really think I should dive deeper into this. Maybe I should, I don't know, read like a book a month and then maybe we can do like a book club thing. I don't know. If anyone is interested, just comment down below. So that was January. February, you would think because February was a month of love and I really enjoyed 3 great romance novels that those would be my favorite, but no, I went against the grain. And the first book I enjoyed was Death on Deck by Verity Bright. This book follows Lady Eleanor Swift, and she is going on a luxury cruise with her beau, Captain Hugh Selden. But on the last minute, he cancels. He's like, sorry, I can't make it. Work came up, and because I earn this meager salary, you know, I can't just not work. I don't know what the rationale was behind that, but he said that, and Lady Eleanor, being the sweet and caring woman that she is, she's like, fine, whatever. I'll go with my whole house on this trip on the Constantia. And they take this luxury boat trip out towards New York. While she's on this boat, she's determined to enjoy herself, but then she witnesses a murder. And while looking around the murder scene, because who doesn't do that, she discovers the firearm that was used to commit the murder, and upon further inspection she finds that the firearm belongs to Hugh, her beau, and this leads to a lot of questions being asked, and she starts to investigate with the help of her butler and her very, very cute French bulldog Gladstone. So these books are super enjoyable. I really like Lady Eleanor Swift series. I discovered it, I think, last year when I first read Murder in an Irish Castle. I started reading those books and I've enjoyed them. I usually cannot put them down, so this was no further exception. The chapters are 1, short, 2, the characters, Lady Eleanor and her butler, they're just hilarious together. They have this father-daughter relationship with them and they tease each other. They also always go on fun adventures together. So it's always something interesting that happens in this book that I really enjoy. And the characters are very familiar to me and I just love the characters so much. So yeah, I think that's about basically why I love this book. It's just because I love the characters. So the next book is Where the Lightning Goes by Jackery Salem. And in this book, we follow Elle, whose soul has been torn apart by a very powerful wizard and locked away. Well, she has been locked away in this abandoned house. And the only memory that she has after all of this is that she fell from the sky. Now that raises questions on its own, but it's fine. So after she escapes, she's thrust in a world full of magic that is both beautiful and dangerous. And she has to try and find her way back to the castle in the sky. But to do this, she needs magic, and magic that she doesn't have. So she goes on an adventure and she travels through enchanted paintings and steals a sword from a dragon's den, and also outwits a demon to find her way up to the castle in the sky. I was not expecting to enjoy this book as much as it did. as much as I did. My bad. I have a whole review up for this book. I enjoyed the storytelling. Obviously, all of these books, I enjoyed the storytelling, but the way this book plays with people's different view of themselves and how they see themselves and how other people see them. You are not just one person in yourself, basically, if that makes sense. If you read the book, you would understand it, but you comprise of different personalities, and each personality makes up a different side of you and a different side of what people see of you. And it was such a powerful read that after I read it, I was just like, wait, hold on. I'm befuddled, I'm baffled, and I am happy. And it just makes you aware of the fact that you have to accept all of you to be happy, not just one part of you. And that, I believe, was just like the main focus of the book, was to accept all of you, even the bad and the ugly, to be happy with what you have in life. Now we jump to March, where my top favorite was Daisy Jones and the Six. For those of you who've seen the show or who have read the book, I'm sure you would know why this was my favorite. But for those of you who don't know, this was written as an oral history of one of the greatest bands in the 70s called Daisy Jones and the Six. In this book, we follow the lives of the Six, who is led by Billy Dunn, and of course, the rest of them. They are 5, I believe, but they call themselves the Six, because that makes sense. Anyway, and how they become famous, just the road they take from high school up until where they become famous. And then on the other side, we get Daisy Jones, who lives in LA, and she's trying to become big without taking the traditional means of becoming a famous singer in LA. And while she is trying to build herself up, she is thrust in the direction of Billy Dunn and the group, and their worlds collide in a storm of secrets and deception. And interesting to read this book. Obviously, I didn't listen to the audiobook, and I know a lot of people say the audiobook brings out another different kind of feel to the book, but reading it by itself was just amazing. So yeah, it was just all around a good time. If you haven't read this book, maybe do yourself a favor, because it really is enjoyable. The next book I enjoyed was I'm going to butcher this, Elias Academy by Laura Ray. This book follows Laurie Fields, and you would think she's an ordinary teenage girl who is just trying to help her parents against meat, until a day comes where she is just attacked out of nowhere by this very weird extraterrestrial thing. And so she is thrust in the world of Elias Academy, that is kind of like a combat training school for magical creatures and magical beings. In order to protect her family, Laurie decides that she will stay at this academy to learn magic and to learn combat and all that. But she also needs to find who unbound her magic before she was attacked, or died trying, in a literal sense. I enjoyed the magical system. I see fantasy books that have like werewolves and vampires and spellcasters and all that, but then all of a sudden aliens were thrust in this as well, and I was like, I never thought those go together. And I really enjoyed it. I couldn't put the book down. I wanted to read every single word of it. I wanted to go and just inhale the book. I really loved it. So yeah, it was all around just a magical experience. The writing style is just impeccable. It's amazing, really. I also recently read the other books that Laura Ray wrote, and I really enjoy her writing style. So for those of you who love magical systems and who love just combat training, quirky characters and mysterious characters, a school setting, definitely check this one out, because it really is fun. April, my first book that I really enjoyed and still can't stop thinking about, to be honest, is Ink Death by Cornelia Onke. Still not sure how to pronounce his surname, but here we are. So because this is the third book, I'm not going to dive much into this, but I'm sure a lot of people have seen Inkheart with Brandon Fraser and all that, so you know the gist of it. Meg is like a father. She can read words from a book to life. And in Ink Death, they are all thrust into this magical world called Inkheart that is actually a book. So essentially, Ink Death is a book about books. But while they are in Inkheart, they discover that war is a very dark and dangerous time, and things happen that set a lot of things in motion for them to actually act against the evil that is brewing. And so Mo, Maggie's dad, decides that he is going to give himself up as a vigilante to protect the children of Inkheart and to protect his daughter as well. And he's also trying to save everyone from the man he essentially made immortal. But unfortunately, all sacrifices have to come with a price. Mo has to sacrifice his freedom, and Maggie has to sacrifice her love for a boy who is known to play with fire. That is not a connotation for anything. He actually plays with fire. So if I can say how this book made me feel, it was more of a, wow, this is getting darker and darker with every single page I read, but I just can't put it down. It just shows you how much, I don't know, war destroys people. Yeah, there was this one part in the book where Maggie's mother was like, I do mention it in the vlog, but if she said something along the lines of, you enjoy reading about the hero making sacrifices in books, so why can't you accept the fact that your husband is now sacrificing himself for children, or something along those lines. And I was just like, okay, no need to call out every reader who loves reading about these things, but I think when the situation comes and you are in that area, you're just like, no, I don't like this one bit. So yeah, it was a hard read, but again, the pages kept on flowing. It was just so enjoyable that I couldn't put it down. And I think that is the only book in that trilogy that I would definitely read again. Then the next book was Men of the Otherworld by Kelly Armstrong. And this is a set of short stories set in a world of Kelly Armstrong's Otherworld series. And we follow 3 characters. I think there's 3, yes. We first follow Jeremy's father, who's a questionable character on his own, and how he became Jeremy's father. Then we follow Clayton, who was first a mutt. They are essentially werewolves that aren't part of a pack, so they're usually outcasts and are usually killed because they become menaces for the pack in the future and a security concern. But Clayton, he was turned at the age of 5 by a mutt himself, and he was wild from the age of 5 until around 13-ish. So Jeremy found out about him, and instead of killing him, he domesticated Clay, and Clay has become one of the most notorious werewolves in this world, and a very dangerous man, might I add. He's also a big southern sweetheart, so, you know, we all love Clay. And then we also follow in the third story Jeremy and how he discovers who his mother actually was and what that makes him, because he's half werewolf, half something else. So that was a mystery on its own, but it was very entertaining. I love Kelly Armstrong's Otherworld series, the Women of the Otherworld series, but the fact that she started writing short stories of the characters in most of the books, I was just like, I'm devouring this. So this is personally a personal preference for me, why I like this book. And it also gives background information to the characters that you already know and love. And yeah, I would suggest picking that book up if you already know the characters and you want to know more about them, and if you're going to do a deep dive into Kelly Armstrong's book. In June, did I say this was for June? I meant May. I read Cruel Crown by Victoria Aveyard. I think it's Aveyard. Don't mind my pronunciation. But anyway, and this is the prequel to Red Queen, or 2 prequels, if you want to call it that. And first we follow Queen Corianne. If you know the world, you would know the world is divided by reds and silvers. Reds are the people who bleed red, and silvers are the people who bleed silver and have powers. Reds don't have powers. Anyway, so we follow Queen Corianne and how she writes down thoughts in her diary because she's scared people are manipulating her thoughts in the kingdom. And she also talks about her courting with the King Tiberius, the birth of her son, as well as the dangers to come while there's war between reds and silvers. The ending of that novella was just like, I'm so confused. And then for the second novella, we follow a character who is kind of like a red. She's also part of the resistance who is seeking to plant like rebellions in the Silver's capital. And while she's busy trying to recruit people for this rebellion, she and her team discovers their only way out. A red called, I believe, Mary Barrow, and she's a red as well, but she has powers, which just changes the trajectory of their whole plan. And it turns out she can be their savior. So yeah, that is like a tidbit of information about what it is. But I enjoy dystopian novels, and yeah, that was just such a fast read that I couldn't put it down. So definitely, if you like dystopian, I would suggest picking that book up. And then keeping in the theme of dystopian, my next book is A Thousand Pieces of You by Claudia Gray. In this book, we follow Marguerite, and her parents are like these world-renowned scientists who have just created a dimension jumping thingy machine, but it's like a small thingy, and it's called the Firebird. Unfortunately, with this, it also comes with a batch of enemies. And eventually, while, still conducting experiments because it's still in phase 1 of its thing. I'm not good with science. No. It's still in phase 1. Unfortunately, Marguerite's father dies. And the supposed killer is her parents' star pupil or star understudy, Paul Markov. And determined to find him and bring him back to justice, she jumps through the dimensions that he is also following, and realizes that she and Paul are connected in ways that they didn't really know about. And in the end, she discovers the truth behind her father's murder, and it all just unravels these big secrets that I wasn't expecting. I think because as young adults, I already know how things would flow, but I really enjoyed, again, it's dystopian, it's got futuristic elements, and I just enjoyed the hell out of the story, and I think I read it in like 2 days. I just couldn't put it down. My most favorite part, because she jumps between 3 worlds, she jumps between a very futuristic London, then she jumps to the past in Moscow, and then she jumps, I think, again into the future on an island. The Moscow part was my most favorite. I don't know if it was because of the fact that she really started to realize her love for someone, that she just became, that the story just became embedded in my brain. And yeah, to date, it is still my favorite. But yeah, really enjoyed it. Definitely would recommend. Now we at June. My first favorite was An Endless Escape by Kevin Herning. I ranted and raved about Kevin Herning's A Forbidden Fate last year or the beginning of this year so much. And then came the second book, and I suddenly forgot what happened in the first book. And I wasn't determined to read the first book again because I'm stubborn like that. But yeah, eventually everything came back to me. What this book is essentially about is about a princess who is sent off to marry a prince or king that she kind of grew up with, but that she doesn't really have contact with anymore. And while on their way to this king through the Florian Wood, which is like a cursed wood, they are attacked by a bunch of bandits. And while the leader of the bandits unmasks himself and he's like, hey, remember me? I'm the prince you were supposed to marry, and then you got us cursed. These two are arch enemies from different kingdoms, and they have been cursed to, if they ever touch one another, their kingdoms crumble to dust and everyone in the kingdom dies. And then they start to go on an adventure through the Florian Wood, and they just start to learn one another and create this found family between the princess and the bandits. It was a very enjoyable read. And then the second book came and just floored me. It really is a good continuation of the book. The ending of the book, though, I am highly unhappy with, but it's fine, I guess. We all have to make sacrifices one way or another, but yeah, really enjoyed it. If you love fantasy, I definitely would suggest reading Kevin Herning's books because it's just spectacular. And then the last book for the first half of 2022-23 is Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. And in this book, we follow Liz, her name's Liz Bugsbaum, and she wants to win the heart of her kindergarten sweetheart, Michael. He has recently come back to town, and she really wants him to be her happily ever after. She has this idea in her mind of who and what is a happily ever after and how things have to play out, that quirky kind of thing. And who better to help her than her very annoying neighbor, Wes Bennett. These two start creating ideas of how to win Michael over to Liz, and while they are doing that, Liz is slowly discovering that maybe the annoying neighbor wasn't so annoying anymore. It's a very casual, straightforward love story, but it really was enjoyable. It was just a palate cleanser. June, I was really in a big rut reading slump wise. So when I read this book, it ignited some love in me for love stories again, and I just loved the whole shebang of it. And yeah, I think I would read some more of Lynn Painter's books. I just have to admit that somewhere along the line I zoned out while reading the book. And then it came to where Liz was kissing a certain someone, and I was like, wait, okay, I'm not going to replay that part because that's just going to take away of it all. But it was fun. It was a fun read. And it really is a great book to read when you are busy with things and you put in your headphones and you listen to it on audio. It's fun. It's really fun. It's not difficult to follow or anything. So yeah, I think that's why I enjoyed it. It was just, it took my mind off of everything. And that is the list. I really hope you guys enjoyed. If you did and you've reached this far, please remember to like and subscribe. Comment down below if there are any books that I read that you also read, or any of the books that I listed that you would like to read. And I'll see you guys in a video on Monday. Bye.